Hey guys, today we're in the book of Numbers, chapter 16. Now remember, we're still in the middle section of the book of Numbers where they're in the wilderness of Paran. So they're camped here. They went to the promised land. They come back. They didn't believe in God, God's faithfulness. So God said He's going to wipe them all out. There's been some things going on since they've heard that. Of course, Israel's upset. They're mad. God is telling them, but is yet promising them that one day they will get there. Not them, but their descendants. And today we pick up with the anger of Israel, the sin of Israel against God. And we start off in verse 1. Now Korah, the son of Issachar, the son of Kohath. Now there's a guy named Korah. He's the leader, but you need to remember that he is a Kohath, which is also called in the book of Leviticus Kohathites. And if you remember, the Levites were divided into three groups. And three families, and one of them, the most important, was the Kohathites. These were the people who would carry the holy things of the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant, the candelabra, the altar, the table of incense, the table of showbread. They would have to carry all these. This was an important group. And so here we have a guy named Korah from the Kohathites. And basically he comes and tells them in verse 3, tells Moses, "You have gone too far. For all in the congregation are holy, every one of them, the Lord is among them." So Korah, this leader, gets up 250 other chiefs of Israel and basically says, "Moses and Aaron, you guys are full of pride and power. You're acting like a king above us." He says, basically, we're all holy. That's what he says, right? And all the congregation is holy. God is here, so we're all equal. And that's not true, right? So once again, Korah is charging Moses with a sin that really Korah is responsible for. And we see that mostly in life, right? People who accuse us of things that we didn't do are normally doing that because they themselves are guilty of doing it. And so it's exactly what happens. And so he gets accused of this. In verse 4, Moses heard it. He fell on his face. He humbled himself. He humbled himself in prayer, and he prays. Now, we don't know how long is in between verse 4 and verse 5. He prayed, and in that prayer, the Lord gave him an answer. In verse 5, it picks up with the answer, and he says, "In the morning, the Lord will show you who is in charge." Who is it, right? Who does Lord want to be in charge? And so he gets this answer. And he says, here's what you're going to do. You're going to light the censer, light these little candles of sorts in front of you, these torches in front of you, and God will show you who's in charge. Verse 9, it says, is it too small a thing that that the God of Israel would separate you from the congregation of Israel? He's saying that you have a holy job, but that's not good enough for you, right? It's not good enough. You want more power. And so verse 11, "Therefore it is against the Lord that you and the company have gathered together. What is Aaron that you grumble against him?" And he's saying, "Oh, you're grumbling against Aaron, but don't you remember what just happened in Numbers chapter 12 when Miriam and Aaron came and Aaron had to fall on his face before the Lord and say he was wrong, and now you're accusing him of saying that he's too prideful, that he's full of power? This doesn't make sense." And so Moses sent to call two other guys. So you have Korah, who is the main leader, but you have two others, which is kind of, we would say, co-conspirators, right? You have Dathan, and a guy named Abiram. Abiram. So it's Dothan and Abiram. And they come, these are sons, and they come up, and this is what they say. He says, "We will not come up. Is it a small thing that you have brought us up out of the land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, that you must also make yourself a prince over us?" So these two guys that are in kind of in cahoots with Korah, Dothan and Abiram, they basically say that Egypt was the promised land, that you would bring us up out of the land flowing milk and honey. They're not talking about the promised land because they just went there and they heard a bad report that it's not a place that God has set apart from them. So they're saying, you brought us out of Egypt, the promised land that was flowing with milk and honey. You brought us out to the wilderness, Moses and Aaron, to kill us. And now you're acting like a prince over us. They have forgotten Moses' history. 40 years, really 42 years before this, Moses was a prince. He was a prince of Egypt. He was the right-hand man of Pharaoh. And he gave that up to go to humble himself, right? To be a shepherd, to learn how to lead disgruntled sheep, which is exactly what he's doing here, right? For God's plan in the last third part of his life. And so they're accusing Moses for something that is absolutely a lie. And Moses was very angry. Notice that. Sometimes we think it's bad of us to get angry, but when we are right and we are on the Lord's side, sometimes it's okay to be angry. Moses was very angry and said to the Lord, "Do not respect their offering. I have not taken one donkey from them, and I have not harmed one of them." Moses is telling God, as if God didn't know, don't listen to them. I'm a man of integrity. I'm a man of service. I am a good man, which God knows. So Moses said to Korah, it gives them a little bit more directions. Now, originally he said, just take Korah, take a censer of fire, and God will choose. But now he says, take all 250 chiefs and put a censer of fire from them, and the Lord will reveal which one. And Korah assembled all the congregation. He assembled all of Israel at the entrance of the tent of the meeting, and the glory of the Lord appeared to the congregation. The cloud came over the temple, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Separate yourselves from among the congregation, that I may consume them in a moment." Basically, God came to Moses and said, "Hey, back away, because I'm about to wipe out Israel. I'm tired of them grumbling. I'm tired of them complaining. I'm going to wipe them out." And what happened? And they fell on their face. Moses and Aaron fell on their face and said, O God, the spirits of all the flesh, shall one man sin, and will you be angry with all the congregation? He's saying Moses is placing all the blame on Korah, right? Because of Korah's sin in leading everybody astray, are you going to wipe everybody out for one man's sin? And so what happened? We see that Moses and Aaron interceded for them. And basically God said, here's what I want you to do. Tell Israel to get away from Korah and Dothan and Abiram's tent and their family and anything that they own. Get away, because I'm going to wipe them out. In verse 28, we know this to be true because Moses says, here's how you shall know. Moses already knew there's going to be a supernatural event. He's telling all the people of Israel, 2 million people, right? Here's how you will know that these are not the men of God. These are not the godly leaders that God wants. And what happens? The ground under them split apart and swallowed up their households, all the people that belonged to Korah and all their goods. It says, so they belonged and went down alive into Sheol. Now, Sheol is an Old Testament word. It means the grave. It also means the abyss. Also, in terms, can lead to what we would call today hell, the pit. And so it opens up and consumes them It says, it goes on, it says, and all Israel who around them fled their cry, lest the earth swallows up. You can imagine that all of Israel ran away because an earthquake happened, swallowed them all up. And then the fire came out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men offering the incense, the other leaders. So it consumed the leaders and all of their families, but then a fire consumed the 250 chiefs, right? They were sinning by fire. Think of that, right? They were sinning because they lit a censer and set it before them to see if God was going to anoint them to be a new leader. They were going against God's will. So they were sinning by lighting a fire, and so God kills them by their sin, by burning them in a fire, right? And so by fire they sinned, by fire they were judged. And the Lord spoke to Moses, tell Eleazar, the son of Aaron, to go and to pick up all this molten bronze of all these 250 censers that were burned, right? Go and pick this up, and you're going to cover the altar. You're going to cover, this, and this will be a sign to all people that says you cannot draw close. Verse 40, so that no outsider who is not a descendant of Aaron should draw near to burn incense before the Lord, lest he becomes like Korah in his company. God says, I need to give you a reminder, because apparently the tabernacle and all the things that we talked about in Exodus and Leviticus, you can't keep straight. So let me take the molten bronze that were all the censers and put this on next of the altar of incense, so that you will be reminded that I am holy and you are not. So when you see that molten bronze that is now over the altar, you're going to remember, oh yeah, Korah, okay, I got to stay away. I am not God. I am not holy. But on the next day of the congregation, this is the craziest verse, I think, so far, right? On the very next day, all the people of Israel grumbled. After all that happened, Israel woke up and they were grumbling against Moses and Aaron, saying, you have killed the people of the Lord. You killed the holy people. Korah and Dathan and Abiram and their families and all of the 250 leaders. These were good, godly men. Moses and Aaron, you killed them. Can you imagine the very next day? That's exactly what happens. And so Moses and Aaron came in front of the tent of the meeting, and the Lord spoke to them, and he said, get away from them, because I'm going to wipe them out. I'm tired of them, right? I'm going to wipe them out, that I may consume them in a moment. And they fell on their faces again. Once again, they fell humbled in prayer. And Moses said to Aaron, take your censer, put the fire on it from off the altar. Notice that, from the altar. Remember, the altar only has holy fire, God's fire. He started the altar, and that altar, that fire continues to burn all the way. So take holy fire and lay incense on it and carry it quickly to the congregation and make atonement for them. Remember, Aaron is the high priest, right? And so Moses said, hurry before God kills them. Run into the crowd of Israel. Run into the 2 million people who literally want us dead. It's really what's happening, right? Israel is revolting against Moses and Aaron. He said, get holy fire and put some incense on it and run into the crowd that wants us dead, because you need to make atonement for them. For wrath has gone out for the Lord, and the plague has begun. People started to die in Israel. You could just imagine like a cloud, like a plague, just moving around Israel. People are starting to drop off and drop off and drop off. And exactly what Aaron did. Aaron took holy fire, took the incense. Verse 48, and he stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was stopped. He stood between the living and death. And he stood between there with an atonement for their sins to stop God. And the plague was stopped. And the plague killed 14,700 plus all the ones who died with Korah and Dathan and Abiram. And Aaron returned to Moses as the entrance to the meeting, and the plague was stopped. So when you hear this story, it's an amazing story, but one of the most amazing things is the simple question, where is Jesus? Jesus is Aaron. Jesus is the high priest. There is a plague of death that is coming around mankind, and Jesus ran into the middle of that, and he himself took our sin. He took our death, was killed and was buried, but defeated it, was resurrected so that we might live. So when you hear this story, yes, it's about people who are revolting against God, but then you see the heart of Moses, you see the heart of Aaron. Time and time again, people hate them, people are against them, but they're stepping in and they're interceding for the salvation of people. It's exactly why Jesus Christ came to earth. I hope that makes a little bit more sense, and we will see you tomorrow in chapter 17. God bless.